Hey guys, tonight we slip into the dense green lungs of the Andes Mountains somewhere so high up. Clouds look like foggy puddles, and the air is so thin your lungs feel like they're sipping instead of breathing. You're on a narrow trail, and every step squelches against damp moss. The mist curls around your ankles like it's trying to pull you back, and your boots crunch against stones that haven't moved in centuries. Above, birds that don't exist in guidebooks screech warnings you can't understand. Below a drop so deep, the bottom might as well be a different planet. You're walking the exact path where, allegedly, a boy once vanished for 3 days and came back older. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and the time you're listening in the comments. I love seeing who's tuning in around the world. Now, turn off the lights, close your eyes, and pretend it's raining. Cats and dogs out there, don't worry. No umbrellas needed. Let's start tonight's journey with that rain in the background. You trudge on. The jungle narrows. The temperature drops. Suddenly, just as you're about to turn back, the trees part. What lies before you doesn't look real. Stone terraces carved into the mountainside, like an open-air staircase to the clouds. Granite buildings arranged with unnatural precision. It's a city, but no smoke rises from chimneys. No dogs bark. No fires flicker. It's completely, eerily silent. Like a breath held for 500 years. You've just found Machu Picchu. The jungle tried to keep it secret. Vines draped over everything. Moss shrouded the walls, and mist served as nature's curtain. You step forward, heart pounding, half expecting someone to yell at you for trespassing. But there's no one here. No guards, no locals. Just the ancient wind and your own heartbeat thudding too loudly in your ears. You lean against a stone wall for support. It's cold, shockingly cold, and dry. Despite the humidity, this stone drinks up moisture like a sponge. You wonder if it's always been like this. If someone leaned here centuries ago, just as afraid, just as curious. Your guide, a weathered man named Tupac, of course his name is Tupac, whispers. They say the mountains choose who sees this place. You smirk. That's the kind of line a local gets paid to say. But the hairs on your arms still rise. Machu Picchu wasn't built to impress tourists. It was never meant for cars or drones or Instagram captions. It was carved, yes, carved out of a ridge, 8,000 feet above sea level. Not exactly the most convenient real estate. And yet, the Incas made it happen. Now here's your reality check. Even if you made it up here, back in the 1400s, you still probably wouldn't survive. The altitude alone would mess you up. Then there's the lack of food. The animals that would like a nibble of your soft. Foreign limbs. And, oh yeah, the Inca military. Let's just say they weren't handing out visitor badges. The weird part. Even though this city feels like it fell out of the clouds, it's not some random hideaway. Historians agree, Machu Picchu was built during the reign of Pachacuti, the 9th Inca ruler. The guy basically rebranded the whole empire. He didn't just expand territory, he transformed it into a political, spiritual, and architectural powerhouse. And yet, he chose this place? Why, that's still debated. Some say it was a retreat. Others argue it was a pilgrimage site, or even a royal estate built to align with the sun and the stars. The truth might be all of the above or none of it, but you don't need to decide that now. Right now, you're still standing at the edge, breath fogging in the cool mountain air. The sun is sliding lower, painting the clouds pink and gold. The city glows faintly, as if it's been waiting for you. You take a step forward and stub your toe on something. A stone, small, loose, triangular. You pick it up. It's warm. Huh. That's odd. And before you can think twice, Tupac is already ahead of you, disappearing behind a mossy archway. If you want to understand this place, he calls out, voice echoing, you need to see the Temple of the Three Windows. You follow, even as the mist starts curling in again. Even though every instinct tells you this city wasn't just forgotten, it chose to vanish. And something about it, maybe the stillness, maybe the strange warmth in your hand makes you wonder, did it ever truly belong to us? Because if it did, where is everyone? You glance back once, just trees and sky, and the trail you came from. It's gone. You press on. The moss squishes underfoot like wet velvet, and the temperature drops another degree. You can't tell if it's the altitude, the shadow of the mountains, or just the weight of history bearing down on your spine. The silence here is so thick, it feels curated, like the very air has rules. And you're breaking them just by breathing. Tupac waves you through a crumbling stone arch, worn down like a lion's molars. You step into a wide clearing, and there it is. Machu Picchu, all of it. And you feel it before you even process what you're seeing. Awe. No, not the casual kind you toss around on a TikTok reel. Not the oh wow, cool kind. We're talking full body, goosebump raising, throat closing awe. The kind that grabs your lungs and says, you are very, very small. And this is very, very old. Sunlight spears through clouds, turning every edge of stone gold. The city spreads out like a stone mosaic terraces, cascading down the mountainside like a green staircase to nowhere. Homes, temples, fields. The famous stepped rows that look like a Minecraft world designed by aliens with excellent taste and symmetry. You move forward slowly. Each step echoes, even though there's no wall to bounce the sound. The place hums in your bones. There's no roof on any building, just the frames, just the shells. But those shells are perfect. The walls aren't cemented. The stones aren't glued. They're just fitted, as if they whispered to each other, aligned like puzzle pieces, and held hands. Even modern engineers scratch their heads. This kind of dry stone construction, called ashlar, with stones shaped so precisely they hold together through earthquakes, that's not just advanced, that's wizardry. And here's your historical anchor for this leg of the trip. The Inca civilization didn't use wheels for heavy lifting. No beasts of burden hauled these stones up here, except maybe llamas, who are adorable but famously useless for dragging several-ton boulders uphill. No iron tools either. They carved and shaved stones using stone. Yes, they leveled boulders using harder boulders. And they did it with so much precision that you can't slip a razor blade between the seams. That's not just architecture. That's devotion. That's obsession. That's maybe a little creepy. You trail your hand along a wall. Smooth, cool, unyielding. The stones feel like they remember being placed here. Tupac gestures to the city. People think Machu Picchu is one thing, but it's many things. You raise an eyebrow. That's vague and mysterious. Exactly what you wanted. He points left. Housing sector. Right. Agriculture terraces. Dead ahead. The sacred plaza. Behind him. Through a carved doorway. The Temple of the Sun. You don't know where to go first, but your feet choose for you. You drift toward the edge of the plaza, where a low wall overlooks the steep valley below. The clouds swirl like boiling milk, and you can't see the bottom. This was once a meeting place. Right here, Inca nobles stood, perhaps sipping something fermented, watching the sun rise behind the sharp tooth of Huayna Picchu, the mountain that frames the city like a dagger aimed at the sky. You sit on the wall. A gust of wind whips your hair, and suddenly, you smell something. Smoke no palo santo. That rich, citrusy wood scent that clings to ritual and memory. But there's no one burning incense here. No vendors. No tourists. No sign of anyone. And still, it lingers, just long enough to question your nose. You close your eyes, and just for a moment, you imagine what this would have looked like alive. Chatter in Quechua, children weaving through legs, bright textiles flapping in the wind, reds and golds, and deep indigo dyes crushed from jungle insects. A priest raising a carved vessel to the sun. A llama munching on something it definitely shouldn't be eating. Life, color, sound, gone. And here's the kicker. The Spanish never found it. Yeah, let that sink in. They conquered almost everything else. Burned temples, melted gold, converted the living and dug up the dead. But Machu Picchu somehow, this city, perched like a stone crown between two jagged peaks, stayed invisible. Not a single conquistador scrawled a word about it in their dusty records. Not one map, not one rumor. It's like Machu Picchu pulled its own invisibility cloak over itself and said, nope, not today. That's not just lucky. That's uncanny. Historians still argue whether the Spanish truly never knew it was here, or if local guides kept their mouths shut on purpose, protecting a sacred place even as the world burned down around them. Honestly, you hope it's the second one, because that would mean someone fought back, not with swords, but with silence. Tupac moves closer and sits beside you. They say the city has spirit, not soul, spirit. You ask him what that means. He taps his head. It stays in your thoughts. You dream of it after, like it wants you to remember. You believe him, because already. The lines of the stone, the soft rhythm of the terraces, the way the wind whistles through the cracks, it's all seeping into you. It's the kind of place that doesn't let go. Like it rewires a tiny corner of your brain and waits for you to visit again in a dream. Below, a bird cries. Not a parrot, not anything you recognize. Something sharp, lonely. And as the fog rolls in again, thicker this time, you catch one last glimpse of the stone city before it disappears. The wind carries a whisper. It's probably just the trees. Probably, but you wonder, What happens when a city wants to be forgotten? And what if now that you've seen it, it remembers you too? You step away from the edge. The plaza behind you feels different now, less like ruins, more like a paused performance. The walls, the terraces, the half-open doorways, all of it frozen mid-sentence, like someone hit pause and forgot to come back. You wonder if that's why the stones are so tight. So perfect, maybe they were built to hold the silence. You follow Tupac toward a more enclosed part of the city. The stones here are bigger, heavier. You can feel it in your feet, like the weight of history is dragging your steps just a little slower. The walls start to narrow, and the sound of your breath seems to bounce differently, like the place is listening. Now you're entering the Temple District. Not officially, because no one really knows what each building was called. But the vibe changes. You feel it. It's not just religious, it's reverent. Like the stones are arranged in ways meant for the stars, not just people. Then, Tupac points to something that, at first glance, just looks like a particularly well-cut wall. But when you get closer, you see it. 3 giant windows, perfectly shaped, angled just right, looking out across the valley like 3 unblinking eyes. Welcome to the Temple of the 3 Windows. It's not flashy, no gold, no mosaics, no ceiling. But it punches you in the chest, harder than any cathedral. These windows aren't accidental. They face east right where the sun rises. On the solstice, light pours through them like liquid gold, bathing the floor with warm glow. You kneel, placing your hand in the path of the sunbeam, and for a second, you swear the rock beneath it hums. Mainstream historians tell you this place was probably used for solar ceremonies, maybe royal rituals, maybe the worship of Inti, the sun god. Standard Inca stuff, right? But here's the fun part. Some fringe researchers suggest those 3 windows represent Tawantinsuyu, the 4 parts of the Inca Empire, united by Cusco, the navel of the world. 3 windows, 1 center. It's symbolic, maybe even cosmic. The Incas were big on the number 3. Heaven, earth, and the underworld. Condor, puma, and snake. Body, mind, and spirit. You glance at the stones again, suddenly unsure whether you're standing in a building or inside a myth. And the stones, let's talk about those. These aren't your basic field rocks. These are massive chunks of granite quarried and shaped with such precision that modern masons still blink at them sideways. And remember, no wheels, no draft animals, no steel tools, just stone, sweat, and an uncanny understanding of pressure points and balance. You run your fingers along a seam between 2 stones. You can't feel a gap. It's smooth, like one solid piece of melted rock. The angles are so precise, it's almost surgical. How did they do this without laser levels or CAD software? That's the riddle. Some believe they used a technique involving sand and friction, grinding the rocks together slowly over weeks, maybe even months. Others suggest they used intense heating and cooling to fracture and mold the stones. Like ancient engineers playing with the Earth's crust like clay. And then there are the weird theories. The what if they had help ones? Aliens, sonic levitation, secret Inca, vibrational tech stuff you're not supposed to take seriously. But after standing here, between these impossible walls, You don't dismiss anything out of hand. Even mainstream archaeologists admit something strange. These buildings aren't just earthquake resistant, they're earthquake embracing. The trapezoidal doors and inward sloping walls absorb seismic shock like ancient shock absorbers. When the ground shakes, the stones dance, then settle back like nothing happened. You tilt your head and ask Tupac, "How long do you think this took to build?" He shrugs. Depends. If you're asking with a clock, maybe decades. But if you're asking with your heart, maybe forever. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds right. Now comes the kicker. Remember that this entire city wasn't built on a flat mountain. It was carved into a saddle ridge between two peaks. So, instead of leveling the land, the Incas respected the natural curve. They followed it, shaped the city like it grew out of the mountain's bones. This wasn't just practicality, it was philosophy. The Incas believed in harmony with nature. They didn't dominate it, they danced with it. And nowhere is that clearer than in a spot you almost miss, a polished stone outcrop in the center of the temple plaza. Tupac calls it the heart. You kneel beside it. It's not decorative. No markings. Just smooth, worn, curved like hundreds of hands pressed here over centuries. It's warm. Maybe from the sun. Maybe from memory. You press your palm against it, half expecting to feel a pulse. And maybe you do. But here's something even weirder. When you close your eyes and stay still, completely still, you hear nothing. And then, under that nothing, something. A low frequency. A thrum. Not noise. Not song. Just resonance. Could be your imagination. Could be blood in your ears. Or maybe this temple really is singing to the sun in a language you've forgotten. Now, here's your fringe tidbit. A few researchers believe Machu Picchu may have been more than a city. It could have been a vibration chamber, a place where acoustic properties enhanced spiritual experiences. Some rooms echo in weird ways. Some absorb sound completely. There's one chamber, deep in the ruins, where a whispered chant sounds like a choir. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe not. Historians still argue whether this was all just symbolic, or if the Incas really used sound like medicine, or transport, or magic. You don't have to decide now. You're still sitting at the temple's heart, listening for something you're not sure you're meant to hear. The clouds outside grow thicker. Sunlight fades into a cool, silver haze. The wind swirls through the windows, carrying the smell of rain and distant orchids. And somewhere nearby, a condor screams. You look up, but there's nothing in the sky. Just clouds. But you swear something moved behind them. Something massive. Something watching. You shake it off. Probably just mist and shadow. Probably. Still, when you stand up, you avoid turning your back to the temple windows. Because in a place this old, you never really know who's watching from the other side. You're back on your feet now, and the air's shifted again. Colder, sharper. A mountain breeze curls in from the north, carrying the scent of something faintly metallic, wet stone. Maybe. Or the trace of ancient blood rituals long since dried into dust. Either way, it gives you a chill, and not the fun kind. Tupac leads you away from the Temple of the Three Windows and down a narrow stone path, the kind that demands your attention. No rails, no guide ropes. One wrong step, and you're off the edge of the world. Your boots crunch gently against gravel, and the whole city seems to whisper underfoot. You reach a small courtyard of sorts, open sky above, soft moss below, and in the center, a strange stone pedestal. It's unlike anything else here. Angular, deliberate, carved with care. It's not a seat, not a table, not an altar. It's a sundial, or hey, more precisely, the Intihuatana stone. Tupac doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. The energy changes. The air thickens, like walking into a chapel during the last echo of a hymn. You approach slowly, each step weighted with something you can't name. Not fear, not reverence, something else. Curiosity, maybe, but the deep kind, the kind that keeps you awake at 3 a.m, wondering if the moon is watching. Mainstream historians call this object the Intihuatana, or hitching post of the sun. They believe the Inca priests used it to track solstices and equinoxes to tie the sun in place with ritual during the changing seasons. It aligns with the sun's position so precisely that, during the spring and autumn equinoxes, it casts no shadow at noon. Let that sink in. A stone, hand-carved half a millennium ago, shaped so accurately that it syncs with celestial mechanics to the millisecond. No telescopes, no computers, just math, stone, and stars. And this thing still works. You glance at your watch, then up at the sky. Clouds drift lazily past, but you can feel it, the heavens bending around this one stubborn stone, like it's an anchor for the sun itself. But here's your fringe fact. Some believe the Intihuatana wasn't just astronomical. It was spiritual technology. Yeah, not metaphor. Actual tech. Not metal and wires, but energy tuning. There are whispers, quiet ones, that the Incas used stones like this to harness energy from the earth. Not just measure it, use it, maybe for healing, maybe for communication, maybe for traveling elsewhere. You laugh a little at the thought, but then you place your hand on the top of the Intihuatana. It's warm, not sun-warmed. This heat pulses gently from the stone's core. Like a heartbeat, you pull your hand back. The warmth fades instantly, but your fingers still tingle. You glance at Tupac. He shrugs. It remembers you now. Great. That's not ominous at all. But let's rewind a bit. Because the very existence of this stone throws more fuel on the already smoldering debate about what exactly Machu Picchu was. Tourists are told it was a royal estate for the Inca Emperor Pachacuti, like an Andean summer home. That's the official story. Clean, safe, digestible. But that story has holes big enough to fit a whole llama caravan through. For one thing, why build it here? This spot is remote, even by Inca standards. The mountain terrain is brutally steep. The weather changes 10 times a day. Everything had to be hauled in stone. Soil, water, food, and there are no defensive walls, suggesting it wasn't meant to be protected like a fortress. So why go through all that effort just for a retreat? Some archaeologists suggest it wasn't a home, it was a university of the sacred, a training ground for priests, astronomers, and elite thinkers, a mountaintop lab where the brightest minds of the empire studied the cosmos, communed with the mountains, and prepared for something big. But then, there's the weirdest theory of all, that Machu Picchu was a portal, not the Stargate kind, not lasers and wormholes, but a place where the veil between worlds is thinner, a place where the spiritual world touches the physical, where shamans could travel through consciousness, guided by plants, stars, and stones. Some even say the Incas never abandoned the city. They just shifted away. Still here, just not in your dimension. You chuckle nervously, because it's silly, obviously. And yet, you glance back at the Intihuatana, still pulsing, still silent, and you remember what Tupac said earlier. It stays in your thoughts. He's not wrong. You leave the sundial behind, winding deeper into the sacred zone. The path tightens, overgrown with ferns and spotted with orchids the size of your hand. The petals glisten with mist, glowing faintly like stained glass kissed by moonlight. And then, suddenly, the city opens up again. Terraces stretch out below you like giant steps for a slumbering god. Perfectly carved rows of farmland descending the mountain. This is where the Incas fed themselves. And they didn't just grow crops, they engineered the soil. Here's your historical nugget. The Incas were masters of agricultural microclimates. These terraces weren't just for erosion control. They created distinct growing zones by layering gravel, sand, and topsoil, allowing them to plant crops from vastly different altitudes in one place. They even had an ancient greenhouse system. Imagine that, high-tech farming in the 1400s, using nothing but stone, observation, and patience. No pesticides, no tractors, just altitude and ingenuity. You kneel beside a low wall and run your fingers through the soil. It's still rich, still alive. A few rogue sprouts peek up like shy toddlers. Tupac breaks the silence. This city was not just made to live in. It was made to last. And yet no one stayed. No fire destroyed it. No siege, no plague. Just silence. And here's the haunting part. There are no burial sites at Machu Picchu. Not like the ones found in Cusco or other major cities. No graveyards, no tombs, just a few ceremonial bones. Historians still argue whether the people left voluntarily, were summoned elsewhere, or simply disappeared. You stand up, brushing off your hands. The mist is thicker now, clinging, cold. You can't see the Intihuatana anymore, or the temple, or the path you took. You're alone in the terraces. A crow calls out harsh and unexpected. Not a jungle bird, not local. You whip your head around. Nothing, just green and stone and fog. And then, from deep in the mist, something moves. A shadow, no. A figure tall, wrapped in fabric, gliding silently along the edge of a terrace. You freeze. It doesn't speak, doesn't stop, just moves forward and vanishes behind a stone wall. When you reach the spot, there's nothing there. No footprints, no sign, just orchids, wind, and the feeling bone deep that you're no longer just visiting. You're part of the city now, and it remembers you. You're not breathing very deeply now, are you? Not out of fear? Exactly. More like reverence. Like walking through an ancient cathedral after midnight. You feel watched, but not in a creepy horror movie kind of way. It's quieter than that. Like the mountain itself is peering down, deciding if you're worth knowing. The terraces behind you vanish in the fog. Tupac's gone too again. He has a habit of disappearing right when you start questioning reality. You should probably be used to it by now. But this place doesn't really do comfort. You follow a faint trail. Damp moss squelching underfoot. It curves around the mountainside, past a cluster of low walls that might have once been homes. The kind of homes where someone stirred quinoa over a fire, whittled a flute for a child, or stitched a ceremonial robe in the dim morning light. You can almost hear it, the rhythm of daily life, long since turned to mist. But then you reach a different kind of space, a clearing framed by high stone walls. Unlike the others, these are curved, deliberate, smoothed as though time itself ran its hand over them again and again. And in the center, resting quietly, as if it had always been there, is a single stone doorway. No door, just an arch, an entrance to nowhere, or maybe everywhere. You step closer, boots crunching gently on gravel and time. This isn't just architecture. This is symbolism, an intentional threshold. You remember your fringe fact for the night. Some believe these kinds of doorways weren't made for people, but for spirits. Specifically, this could be what Andean mystics call a puerta a los dioses, a doorway to the gods. Of course, mainstream archaeology says otherwise. They'll tell you it's a remnant of an unfinished structure, just another piece of ceremonial design. Nothing to see here. Folks, keep moving. But historians still argue whether Machu Picchu had a mystical infrastructure, a layout based not only on practicality or power, but on cosmic alignment. This stone arch may very well mark the passage between physical and spiritual realms. And the way it hums when you get close. Yeah. Try explaining that away with a trowel and a survey map. You stand beneath the arch. A cool breeze brushes your cheek like breath or memory. You half expect something to step out the other side. Nothing does, but you do. And when you pass under it, it's like walking through static. A soft electric buzz dances along your skin, and your vision sharpens for just a heartbeat too long. The city on the other side looks the same, but doesn't feel the same. And suddenly, you're in the residential sector. That's right, people lived here. Around 150 of them full-time. According to most estimates, not a huge city, but one with a purpose. Possibly caretakers, priests, astronomers, and a few nobles who didn't mind the altitude. You peek into the remains of a house-dry stone walls, a trapezoidal window, remnants of a fire pit, not cozy by modern standards, but undeniably human. And here's something quirky for you. Inca doorways and windows are always trapezoids, not squares, not rectangles. Why? Because trapezoids withstand earthquakes. Yup. These guys were building earthquake-proof homes 500 years before engineers started using seismic modeling software. Think about that the next time your IKEA bookshelf wobbles during a thunderstorm. You wander through the alleyways, brushing fingers along stone walls so precisely fitted You can't wedge a credit card between the blocks. No mortar, no glue, just stone kissing stone, locked together like a lover's secret. There's an artistry to it, like calligraphy carved into the bones of the mountain. And while the tourists usually stick to the famous temples and the iconic viewpoints, this area, this is where the magic lingers. Because this is where people lived, where they cooked, joked, argued, loved. Maybe even where they whispered about the sky changing color one night, or the sun standing still for just a second too long. You pause at one small open area, a kind of shared courtyard. There's a worn stone bench against the wall. You sit, and for a moment, it feels warm beneath you, like someone just left. And that's the thing about Machu Picchu. It never truly feels empty. You hear a soft rustle. You look up. A woman stands nearby. No, wait, not stands. She's sitting, kneeling, her hands folded in her lap. A traditional Andean shawl wraps around her shoulders. Her hair is long and braided. Her eyes, impossibly dark. She doesn't blink. You blink, and she's gone. You're not scared. Weirdly, you feel comforted, like someone's watching over the place, making sure it's remembered. You stand again. The breeze carries the smell of damp lichen and oddly smoke. But there's no fire nearby, just the lingering scent of stories cooked slowly and shared over centuries. A few more paces, and you arrive at something unexpected. A long, narrow ceremonial fountain. Water still trickles down, even after 500 years. The Incas were masters of hydraulic engineering. They diverted streams from miles away to feed this place gravity-powered plumbing that still works. You trail your fingers through the water. It's icy, pure, the kind of clean that makes your bottled water feel ashamed. Here's a weird fact. Some researchers believe the sound of the flowing water was designed, not just functional, but tuned, like a natural white noise machine for meditation, ritual, or just good vibes. You sit near the fountain, letting the trickle lull your thoughts. And you wonder what kind of ceremonies happened here. Historians are still torn. Some say simple offerings. Others claim more intense rituals. Blood, sacrifice, hallucinogenic journeys led by priests. But there's one idea that keeps circling, that Machu Picchu was a transition point, a place where the veil between life and death was thin, a kind of cosmic airport lounge. People came here to prepare for the next world, to say goodbye, to ascend. And not all of them came back down. As the mist curls in again, you notice how quiet it's gotten. Even the birds have paused. Just the sound of water and your own breath. And then faint, but unmistakable a flute. Soft, melancholy, beautiful. It plays from somewhere above. You climb a few steps, moving toward the sound, heart ticking a little faster now. Not out of fear, but anticipation. The music stops. You round the corner. Nothing. Just a stone plaza. Empty, but for a single feather, bright blue, lying perfectly in the center. You pick it up. It's warm. That's not normal. And now you really want to know what's waiting at the top, what you'll find at the very summit, and more importantly, what you'll leave behind when you do. You climb slowly now, not because you're tired, Though let's be real, this altitude is no joke, but because something in you has changed. Machu Picchu isn't just stone and fog anymore. It's a conversation, a test, and every step you take feels like it's being measured, weighed, not for judgment. This isn't a Hollywood temple full of booby traps, but for something quieter. Permission, maybe. The feather from before is still in your hand. You run your thumb along its smooth spine. Definitely not from a pigeon. No. This blue shimmer probably belonged to a mountain tanager, one of the brightly colored birds that flutter through this cloud forest like living confetti. The Incas believed feathers were divine messengers, not in a "you've got mail," way more like the universe is nudging you. Way. And, well, here you are. Ahead, the trail tilts steeper. Steps carved into the mountain lead you to a high platform, a viewpoint called the Intihuatana, or hitching post of the sun. Sounds whimsical, doesn't it? Like you're about to tie up your star pony after a long day of solar galloping. But there's power here. The stone itself juts up like a sundial, angular and deliberate. Archaeologists say it was probably used to track celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, that kind of thing. But historians still argue whether this was science or sorcery. The Inca didn't separate the two. The line between astronomy and spirituality was as thin as the air up here. Measuring shadows cast by the sun was a form of worship, aligning buildings with constellations. It wasn't aesthetics, it was obedience. You reach out and touch the Intihuatana. It's warm. It shouldn't be. The sun's barely out, and the air is chilled enough to see your breath. But the stone hums gently under your fingers, like it remembers something you don't. And that's when you feel it. Not a sound, not a movement, just a shift in the atmosphere, like stepping into the eye of a storm quiet, but charged. You close your eyes. Suddenly, the mountain breathes. You can't explain it, but it's there. A long, deep inhale. And in that moment, you're not standing on a ruin. You're at the heart of a living city, pulsing with energy. People bustle past, dressed in vibrant woven garments. Children run across the courtyard below. Priests, in ceremonial headdresses, chant softly in Quechua, their voices rising and falling like wind. And above it all, the sun, golden, blinding, suspended directly above the Intihuatana. Then it's gone. You open your eyes. The mist has returned. The stone is still. The world has reassembled itself into polite silence. Was it a vision? A dream? A flashback encoded in the stone? You've no idea. But your feet are rooted to the ground, heart beating in your ears like a slow drum. You sit down on the edge of the platform, legs dangling into nothingness. The view stretches wide peaks, rising like jagged teeth, clouds spilling over them like milk. You've never seen anything like it. No camera could catch this. No selfie would do it justice. It's a moment built for memory, not likes. And now, it's time to talk about something you've probably been wondering. Why here? Why did the Incas build a sacred city in such a remote, impractical, high-altitude jungle gym of a location? There are theories, of course. Oh, so many theories. Some say it was a royal estate for Pachacuti, a vacation spot where he could unwind from the stresses of, conquering half a continent. Others argue it was a religious sanctuary, a retreat for priests and scholars to connect with the cosmos. Still others believe Machu Picchu was a checkpoint between worlds, a place where spirits pass through on their way to the afterlife. That feather in your hand might be your ticket. The fringe theory of the night. Aliens? Yep, can't avoid it. Some people claim that the precision of the stonework, the astronomical alignments, and the remote location all scream extraterrestrial engineers. Because, apparently, ancient people couldn't possibly have brains and ambition. Sigh. But let's indulge it for just a second. What if they were right? What if something not quite human helped shape this place? What if that warm hum from the Intihuatana wasn't memory, but communication? Anyway, no giant-eyed gray aliens show up to beam you into the stratosphere. So you stand and keep walking. Down a sloping path now, your boots slipping occasionally on mossy stones. This trail loops toward another curious structure, the Temple of the Condor. Now this one's dramatic. Two massive natural rocks form the outstretched wings of a condor, with a sculpted head embedded in the floor. If you squint, or, let's be honest, lie down and imagine really hard, it resembles a giant condor in mid-flight. The condor was sacred to the Incas, a symbol of the heavens, the connection between earth and sky. According to myth, it carried souls to the afterlife. And this temple, it may have been a ritual site for death and rebirth. There's even a stone below that some say was an altar. For sacrifices. Animal. Definitely. Human. Possibly. That's where the debate starts heating up. Some archaeologists say yes. Others argue there's not enough evidence. One fringe tidbit claims the site once held a pool of sacred blood, used to feed the condor spirit. Comforting. You sit quietly on the edge of the wing. Despite the ominous stories, it's peaceful here. You watch a real condor ride the thermals far above, wings outstretched like the mountains themselves, bowed upward to support it. That's when you hear voices. Not ghostly whispers, actual people. Tourists. A small group, chattering in hushed tones as if the air itself demands reverence. You step aside, blending into the shadows as they pass. One of them stops at the condor altar and frowns. "Do you think they really killed people here?" she whispers. Her guide shrugs. Depends who you ask. Exactly. After they leave, you linger. Something still feels unfinished here. And then you notice it, a small spiral carved into the stone near the altar. Not obvious, almost playful. Spirals, in Indian cosmology, often represent cycles of time, of life, of rebirth. This isn't just a city frozen in time. It's a loop, and you're walking it. Round and round. You leave the condor's shadow, heading down the mountain path, following a trail that seems both old and brand new. The fog swirls thicker here, wrapping around you like a story not quite ready to end. And ahead, just barely visible, is a narrow tunnel carved into the rock. A hidden passage, unmarked on tourist maps, unlabeled by signs, waiting for you. You crouch low to enter the tunnel. The stone walls tighten around your shoulders like a whisper of warning. It's not pitch black. Not yet. but the light fades fast behind you. The air grows cooler, damp, and musky, like the breath of a long-forgotten cellar. The stone under your fingers is slick, worn smooth by time, or if you're feeling poetic, by centuries of careful footsteps. This isn't on any tour brochure. No cheery exit this way. Arrows. No selfies allowed. So, of course, you keep going. You shuffle forward, careful not to bash your head on the uneven ceiling. The tunnel twists slightly, like a snake burrowing beneath the mountain's ribs. You can feel the heartbeat of the place now, slow and steady. Every drop of water that falls from the ceiling echoes like a metronome for ancient memories. And then, finally, the tunnel opens. You're inside a hidden chamber. It's not large, maybe the size of your living room back home, but the walls are covered in something rare, something sacred, carvings. At first, they seem random grooves, zigzags, circles, but you step closer and realize they're far more deliberate. A sun, a puma, a condor, the sacred Inca trilogy, 3 animals representing the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. The condor flies high and carries prayers. The puma roams the earth with power, and the serpent slithers below, guarding secrets and transformation. You brush your fingers over the stone. These weren't made for decoration. They're messages, maybe warnings, maybe guides, maybe both. In the center of the chamber sits a carved basin, dry now, but shaped like it once held liquid. Not for drinking. No, this was ceremonial, possibly filled with chicha, the sacred fermented corn drink, or blood, or water charged with moonlight. Historians still argue whether this chamber was a shrine or a portal, a place to speak with ancestors, or to cross into another layer of existence altogether. You sit on the cool floor, back against the wall, letting your thoughts catch up. It's hard not to feel small here, not just physically, but existentially. You're surrounded by a people who had no wheels, no iron tools, no writing system, and yet created a city more in tune with the stars than your smartphone is with Wi-Fi. The Incas didn't just build cities, they wove them into the mountains like fabric. Every rock, every terrace, every angle was intentional. They believed in sacred geography, that the earth had energy lines, like veins, called secas. Machu Picchu, they thought, sat on a powerful spiritual crossroad. You can't help but wonder if they were right. And if so, where do those paths lead? Something stirs in the corner of the room. Not a movement, a shimmer, a trick of light on stone. But it's enough to draw you up, back on your feet, pulse ticking up slightly. You follow the shimmer. It leads to a small passage, almost invisible, behind a half-collapsed wall. Someone long ago didn't want this entrance to be obvious. Maybe not hidden entirely, but reserved. For the initiated, you crawl through. The tunnel slopes downward now. The temperature drops noticeably. Your breath fogs in the air again. And then you emerge into moonlight. You didn't realize it was night already. You're standing on a terrace, far below the usual tourist paths. No footsteps here, no railings, just grass, stone, and stars. And stretched out before you, barely visible through the gauzy veil of clouds, is the Urubamba River. winding through the valley like a silver serpent. Serpent, there it is again. The stars above are bright tonight. The Milky Way slices across the sky, bold and unwavering. And now you see what the Incas might have seen. They didn't just map constellations from the stars. They read dark spaces between them, shapes not made of light, but of shadow. The dark constellations, one of the most famous, the Yacana, the celestial llama. You squint, trying to trace it, and there it is, a dark patch among the stars, shaped like a llama, suckling its baby. To the Inca, this wasn't just cute farm animal trivia. These celestial llamas were protectors, omens. If they shifted shape, it meant drought, or invasion, or endings. You lie back on the grass, eyes locked on the sky, and you feel it again. That quiet vibration, not quite sound, not quite thought, a memory, maybe of a time when the stars weren't faraway decorations but daily guides, when kings consulted the sky before planting crops, when rituals were timed by Venus's rise and the moon's whispers. And here's the kicker: scientists today are still trying to match these dark constellations with star charts, still arguing whether the Inca used their skies more precisely than Europe's best astronomers of the time. Back in the city, you hear a distant whoosh, like stone shifting, or maybe just a bird landing on a roof. But the echo hangs there, unnaturally long. You sit up. The terrace is lit now, not brightly, but enough. The moon is directly overhead, and it's casting light onto something you hadn't noticed before. A spiral carved into the ground, just like the one you saw beneath the Temple of the Condor. Another loop, another message. You step onto it, and suddenly, you're back in the chamber. The carvings glow faintly. The basin shimmers as if filled. Time is folding on itself like cloth. You blink. Now you're standing before the Temple of the Sun. No footsteps, no walking. Just shift. The temple is built on a curve, matching the movement of the sun across the sky. Windows align perfectly with the June and December solstices. When the sun rises on those days, its light hits exact spots inside the chamber. Coincidence, not a chance. Inside, you find a polished stone altar, smooth as glass, cold as mountain shadow. The Inca believed the sun was their divine ancestor. Inti, the sun god, wasn't just a source of warmth. He was the father of their first emperor. Literally, royal blood, they claimed, sparkled with sunlight. That's one way to boost your resume. You place your hand on the altar. It's vibrating, not violently, but steadily, like a heartbeat. And then one more time you hear it, that same breath of the mountain. Inhale. The mist swirls. A figure stands in the doorway, not threatening, not quite human. Cloaked in feathers and shadow. You blink. Gone. A trick. A vision. Or someone or something that never left. You step outside. The fog is lifting. Slowly, reluctantly. You've seen more tonight than most visitors see in a lifetime. But you know it's not over yet. Not even close. Because there's still one more secret. One more thing no one can explain. How? Exactly did an entire city disappear? And why was it never found by the Spanish? The The sun's edge creeps back over the mountain peaks, lazy and golden, the way syrup might roll over the lip of a spoon. You blink against the warm light, still caught in that mental twilight between what you've just seen and what can't possibly have happened. You were in a tunnel, a shrine, then a terrace, then a temple, and now back on a path, somewhere near the central plaza of Machu Picchu. Except it's empty, no tourists, no guides with whistles and badges, not even a single llama grazing politely for Instagram. The silence presses in. But there's no fear, just that eerie kind of stillness you feel in museums after hours, or in ancient churches, with stone that remembers more than it should. You know what you saw, or at least what you think you saw. The city, it seems, is whispering back now, telling you stories only the mountains remember. And this next one is a big one, because today you're about to dig into the central mystery. How did an entire Inca city vanish without a trace? Let's rewind just a little. When Hiram Bingham found Machu Picchu in 1911, he expected to see chaos, ruin. The aftermath of Spanish conquest scorched temples, defaced idols, melted gold. You know, the usual colonial fingerprint. But he didn't. He found serenity. Empty homes still intact. Terraces still green. Sacred stones still in place. As if the people had just stepped out for groceries and got caught in traffic for 500 years. No burn marks. No smashed pottery. Just abandonment. It's like they vanished overnight. And that's weird, because the Spanish were extremely thorough. When they invaded Cusco in 1533, they ransacked everything. Churches were built on temples. Gold was stripped. Inca priests were executed. It was brutal, calculated, and sadly effective. Yet Machu Picchu was spared. Why you step deeper into the ruins now, tracing your fingers along the mortarless stone. Smooth, interlocking, built without cement, but still tight enough that you can't fit a credit card between the joints. Not even today's engineers can fully replicate this technique. And no, that's not conspiracy, just geometry, patience, and maybe a little magic. Some believe the Spanish simply never found Machu Picchu. The mountains, with their cloud cover and maze-like ridges, acted like a natural cloaking device. It was sacred, yes, but also secret, high above the valley. It may have served as a royal retreat for Pachacuti, the emperor credited with expanding the Inca Empire from a handful of valleys to a civilization stretching from Colombia to Chile. Imagine it, a luxury escape, complete with temples, astronomers, and priests. The Inca version of a mountaintop spa. If your spa also included sacrifices and celestial alignment. But something happened. Around the mid-1500s, not long after the Spanish arrived, Machu Picchu was vacated. Historians still argue whether it was abandoned gradually, as Spanish threats closed in or suddenly, due to something else. A plague, a vision, a prophecy fulfilled. You pause near a small rectangular house, its trapezoidal doorframe leaning like it's tired of holding secrets. Inside, the stone floor is dusty, the walls pockmarked by time. You imagine a family here, maybe a priest and his children, Maybe someone who once watched the stars and whispered messages to the gods. Maybe someone who woke one morning, gathered their few belongings, and walked down the mountain forever. But why? Here's where it gets juicy. There are rumors, plenty of them, that the retreat wasn't just about hiding from the Spanish. That Machu Picchu was a planned exodus site, created in anticipation of an ending. Not the end of the world, but the end of the empire. Some fringe theories even claim that a high priest foresaw the collapse through astrology, perhaps, or strange omens, and ordered the retreat to preserve the knowledge, the lineage, and the faith. Sounds dramatic, maybe. But when you remember that the Inca calendar marked cyclical ages and believed civilizations rose and fell in divine cycles, it doesn't seem too far-fetched. If they saw the Spanish invasion not just as politics, but as cosmic correction, they might have chosen disappearance over defeat. And here's the strange part. No bones were found in the city, at least. Not many. No mass graves. No signs of battle. No signs of Spanish contact. Just a few burials under houses, likely spiritual caretakers or local priests. This was not a war zone. It was a controlled retreat. And that's spooky in its own quiet way. You head up the steps toward the Intihuatana stone, often called the hitching post of the sun. It's carved from the bedrock, rising like a small altar. During the equinoxes, the sun aligns perfectly with its edges, casting almost no shadow. The Inca used it to tie the sun to the earth to keep the seasons in balance. Try not to think about what happens when the sun gets untied. Touching the stone, you feel nothing at first, but then a tiny pulse, like warmth moving through the palm of your hand. Static, imagination, or something deeper energy placed there by centuries of reverence and alignment. It's no surprise that Spanish priests, when they eventually heard about these stones, smashed everyone they could find. They feared the native rituals, the prayers, the power, and they wanted to sever those ties. But they never found this one. Because again, Machu Picchu hid itself. And here's one last twist. Some scholars suggest that the entire city may have been abandoned intentionally and sealed not in fear, but in reverence. Like closing the lid on a sacred box. The paths were overgrown, the trails lost, not due to time, but because someone erased them. You take a step back, and just then, from somewhere deep in the ruins, comes the distant hum of a pututu, an Inca conch shell horn. It's probably the wind, or a bird. Probably. But it's enough to make your heart jump just a little. The trail ahead turns sharply, winding toward the eastern edge of the site, where the Temple of the Three Windows stands. The morning light passes through the trio of trapezoidal openings, throwing golden shapes on the stone floor like a code waiting to be solved. Each window faces a sacred direction. Each angle was designed not just for aesthetics, but for astronomy, for storytelling, for power. You wonder, did they leave these windows open, hoping someone would see, or did they leave them as reminders to never return? You turn to leave, but you pause, because something's changed. There, on the far edge of the courtyard, is a small stone you hadn't noticed before. No bigger than a loaf of bread, but carved with a symbol you recognize. The spiral. Again, always spirals. You kneel beside it, brush away some moss. It's not just a spiral. It's 2-1 coiling inward. One out. A symbol of retreat and return. The Inca left Machu Picchu. That much is clear. But maybe they didn't abandon it. Maybe they buried it. Like treasure. And maybe, just maybe, they expected someone to come back. You're already here. But the story isn't done. Because while Machu Picchu disappeared with barely a whisper, one man's journey to find it is just about to begin. You're standing on the edge of something ancient and unspoken. The stone spiral at your feet still whispering riddles you're not quite ready to answer. But before the moss can reclaim that symbol again, a breeze swirls through the temple of the 3 windows, nudging you forward because now it's time to meet the man who dragged Machu Picchu back into the world's imagination, Hiram Bingham. Picture this. The year is 1911, and you're an American academic, not exactly Indiana Jones. More like Indiana wears tweed and quotes Latin. Bingham isn't even a trained archaeologist. He's a historian from Yale, obsessed not with the Inca, but with Simón Bolívar and the wars of independence. He comes to Peru, chasing a different legend, Vilcabamba, the last stronghold of the Inca resistance. But of course, fate doesn't follow GPS. Bingham's expedition is the classic cocktail of early 20th century exploration, a dash of colonial swagger, a sprinkle of unpreparedness, and a whole lot of hired locals doing the actual work. One of those locals is a Quechua farmer named Melchor Arteaga, at Chansagala Ankuor Tamurs. And on a foggy July morning, Arteaga points Bingham in the direction of some ruins high in the cloud forest. No one expects much. Certainly not a hidden city that would become one of the most iconic landmarks on Earth. The climb is brutal machete hacking, mud slipping, mosquito-bitten misery. You trudge behind Bingham, ducking vines, sweating through your imaginary khakis. Then, suddenly, the trees part, and there it is, Machu Picchu, half buried, overgrown, wild with orchids and vines. But whole, Bingham doesn't gasp. He doesn't faint dramatically onto a fern. In fact, he barely seems to register what he's found at first. According to his diary, he notes the fine quality of the stonework, but assumes it's just a regional estate, not the legendary lost capital. Spoiler, he's wrong, but also kind of right. Because here's the thing, historians still argue whether Machu Picchu was ever the capital of anything. It wasn't Vilcabamba. It wasn't Cusco. It wasn't even mentioned by name in the Spanish chronicles. So what was it, really? A royal estate, a religious sanctuary, an astronomical observatory, a retreat for Inca nobility, maybe all of the above. The only thing everyone agrees on is this: when Bingham found it, no one outside of the local Andean communities had seen it for centuries. Let's take a second here, because it's easy to scoff at Bingham with his mustache and his colonial entitlement. But he did something remarkable. He documented the site. He photographed it. He mapped it. And then, typical Yale move, he started hauling artifacts out of it. Thousands of them. Stone tools, ceramics, human remains, all carted off to the United States under an agreement with the Peruvian government, a temporary agreement that somehow lasted almost a century. Quirky fact: when the university finally returned the artifacts in 2011, they were met at Cusco Airport with a full military escort, a marching band, and something that looks suspiciously like a parade float. Peru takes its ancestors seriously. Back in 1911, though, Bingham's discovery sends ripples through the academic world. National Geographic devotes an entire issue to it in 1913. Suddenly, Machu Picchu becomes a symbol not of imperial ruin, but of mystery, endurance, and otherworldly design. Even if, at the time, no one could quite explain why it was there. You duck into one of the restored homes in the urban sector, the roof now thatched in modern times to show how it might have looked when people actually lived here. The floor is swept clean for tourists, but your mind overlays the ghost of a family hearth, a smoky fire, children curled up in alpaca wool, someone stirring quinoa stew in a clay pot, humming a lullaby older than language. Then it hits you none of them knew that hundreds of years later. Their sanctuary would become an icon for millions. That strangers from all over the world would march up the Inca Trail just to take selfies where their ancestors prayed. And here's where the emotional punch lands. Machu Picchu wasn't lost. It was ignored. For centuries, local people knew it was here. Farmers grazed cattle on the terraces. Children played near the stone fountains. But because the Inca never wrote anything down, at least, not in a script we can decipher, the Western world just forgot. Forgot until a professor with a questionable sense of adventure and a very good publicist came knocking. So what did Bingham really find? Not just a city, a symbol, a bridge between empires, between centuries, between cultures that refuse to vanish completely. And still, even as he stood among its granite bones, Bingham misunderstood its purpose. He called it the lost city of the Incas, thinking it was the final refuge of Manco Inca. He believed wrongly that it had been a last stand, a doomed resistance against the Spanish. But we know better now. It was a place of life, of celebration, of observation, and of a quiet, graceful exit. You wander back toward the main plaza, where grass grows now between ancient stones. The wind rises again, as if remembering your name. You can hear it in the gusts, funneling through stone corridors, the whisper of a city that chose to disappear rather than die in chains. And maybe, just maybe, you understand why. But as you gaze back at the trail Bingham carved with boots and ambition, another question forms. What else did he miss? Because hidden cities don't just reveal their hearts overnight. And Machu Picchu, it's still holding back. Especially one clue Bingham saw and dismissed. But we're not done with him yet. Next, we follow him deeper into the ruins, where one bizarre discovery flips everything we thought we knew upside down. You step carefully through the narrow passageways of Machu Picchu. The stone so perfectly fitted together that not even a sheet of paper can squeeze between the cracks. It's quiet now. Just the shuffle of your boots on old granite, the breath of the mountain brushing your face. But in 1912, this place would have been buzzing with the clatter of excavation tools, camera shutters, and the endless scratching of pencils against notebooks. Hiram Bingham was back this time with more funding, more Yale students, and a license from the Peruvian government that allowed him to excavate and export artifacts. And while Bingham still thought he'd found Vilcabamba, the truth of Machu Picchu would become murkier with every trench dug. Let's pause here and look around with Bingham's eyes. He's not just exploring ruins, he's making headlines. He's the dashing academic turned adventurer, hailed by National Geographic, backed by Yale, and basking in attention that feels, well, a little addictive. He's convinced the city was built for war. He sees fortresses, defensive outposts, escape routes. But as you wander, you realize something different. There are no battlements here, no barracks, no giant walls designed to repel armies. Instead, there are elegant fountains, precisely engineered for water to flow evenly from one basin to another. There are ritual stones aligned to the solstices, terraces that suggest food cultivation, yes, but also experimentation with microclimates. Everything points not to battle, but to balance. Still, Bingham is undeterred. He begins excavating graves around the site, and it's here that things start to get really weird. Because of the 135 human remains his team recovers, about 80% are female. Let that sink in. The man finds an entire lost city, and it's full of women. Cue confusion, cue academic scrambling, cue some very imaginative theories. Bingham, predictably, floats the idea that Machu Picchu was a convent, a sacred place where Inca virgins of the sun lived in isolation, serving the empire and preparing for ceremonial duties. He even suggests, hold on to your llama, that this was where young women were raised to be sacrificial offerings. Yes, really. Now, historians still argue whether that was just colonial fantasy, or if there's a kernel of truth there. Modern studies, of course, complicated everything. Turns out, Bingham's osteological analysis wasn't exactly flawless. Many of the skeletons he thought were female turned out to be male. Oops. But even today, scholars debate the gendered makeup of the Machu Picchu burials. Was it a female-dominated retreat, a pilgrimage site, a ceremonial sanctuary where men and women lived in separate quarters? You pass by a reconstructed dwelling, its walls smooth and cool under your fingertips. There's a notch in the stone by the doorframe, small, deliberate. Maybe it held a charm, a reed mat, a woven talisman to protect the threshold. The lives that unfolded here are just whispers now, but you can feel them. And here's your emotionally immersive moment for the evening. Imagine being one of those young women, taken from your home, chosen for your beauty or your lineage, transported high into the clouds where your family may never see you again. But you are not sad. You are honored. The empire calls you Akla chosen. You live in sacred rhythm, bathed in ceremony, cloaked in the scent of crushed coca leaves and smoked maize. And you never see the Spaniards coming. The records go silent. The rituals stop. The Inca fall. But up here, where no roads reach, you and your sisters simply vanish. Not taken, not destroyed, just folded into the mist. Back in 1912, Bingham's team also makes a surprising find near the Temple of the Condor, a structure that, at first glance, looks like an abstract piece of modern sculpture. But look again. Two massive natural stones form the outstretched wings of a bird. A carved stone at the center completes the body. The floor beneath it, a ritual chamber, possibly for sacrifices or perhaps for astronomical tracking. No one knows for sure. And there it is, again, that phrase. No one knows for sure. Because Machu Picchu gives up its secret slowly, and only when it wants to. Now here's a deliciously quirky tidbit. One of Bingham's most overlooked discoveries was a staircase that leads nowhere. It just ends. Mid-mountain. No door. No structure. Just stops. Some scholars think it may have once connected to a wooden bridge, now long decayed. Others believe it was symbolic and architectural metaphor for the journey to the heavens. Still others, they think it might have been a mistake. Even the Inca. After all, we're human. You take a seat on one of the temple steps, watching the shadows creep along the carved stone. If Bingham was right about one thing, it's this. There's an overwhelming sense that this city wasn't abandoned in haste. There are no signs of violence, no scorched walls, no collapsed altars, just stillness. Which brings us to a bigger question. Why did the Inca walk away? Some say it was disease. Smallpox, after all, often spread faster than the Spanish armies. Others suggest political upheaval, internal conflicts that made Machu Picchu less important strategically or spiritually. Some think it was never meant to be permanent, that it was a seasonal estate or ceremonial destination, always meant to fade back into the forest. But here's where things get chilling. There's one theory that suggests the Inca wanted the Spanish to never find this place, that they deliberately erased its trails, took down markers, disguised entry points, and left it behind like a time capsule buried in stone. Not as a coward's retreat, but as an act of defiance, a refusal to let everything be taken. Because if they couldn't win the war, they could still win the memory. And as you sit here, centuries later, watching the clouds wrap around the same peaks their eyes once saw, you start to understand something. Machu Picchu isn't just a ruin, it's a message. One carved in silence, wrapped in moss, and delivered across centuries to anyone curious or brave enough to listen. And Bingham, for all his ambition, he never really heard it. He wanted conquest, discovery, headlines. But Machu Picchu was offering something gentler, something eternal, still. Bingham wasn't done exploring. He was about to descend into a darker part of the complex, a place the locals called the prison group, where oddly shaped stones and strange niches suggested secrets buried even deeper. And trust me, the next place he steps, it changes everything. Down you go now, toward the darker heart of the ruins, past sun-drenched terraces and whispering walls, into the deeper, damper corridors where the air smells of wet earth and old secrets. This part of Machu Picchu is a far cry from the open plazas and royal residences. It's quieter, heavier, and maybe it was never meant for everyone. Locals today call it the prison group, but don't let the name fool you. That's just Bingham's interpretation, another guess layered on centuries of silence. What he saw here reminded him of confinement small cells, a peculiar underground cave, and oddly shaped rocks that looked like stocks or restraints. But historians still argue whether these spaces were jails, storage rooms, ritual enclosures, or something stranger altogether. You step into one of the narrow stone rooms. The ceiling hangs low. The walls curve inward slightly. There's a rectangular hole in the floor, deliberate, chiseled with precision? Was it a grave A drain, an offering pit, maybe all three, or none? Here's the historical fact of the night the Inca didn't have prisons in the way we think of them. Justice in Tawantinsuyu. The Inca Empire was swift and often public. Thieves might lose a hand. Traitors could be executed. But long-term imprisonment, not really their style. Which makes the idea of a prison here feel off. So let's look at it a different way. What if this was a place of transformation? You follow a carved stair down into a semi-subterranean room. The air shifts. It's cooler, damper. The floor is worn smooth by centuries of footfalls, but it still feels sacred underfoot. At the far end of the room, lit only by a sliver of sky from a break in the stone above, is a massive, oddly shaped slab. It looks like nothing in the rest of the complex, jagged, asymmetrical, deliberate. This is one of Machu Picchu's many enigmas, the ceremonial stone. Some call it the Temple of the Condor. From a certain angle, the carved rock resembles the head of a condor, Peru's sacred bird, with its wings stretching out behind, formed by two massive natural stones fused into the mountain wall. Beneath this symbolic figure, a small niche, possibly a sacrificial altar, possibly a holding cell, or maybe a tunnel to the underworld. And yes, that last one's real. Fringe historians argue this section of Machu Picchu connects symbolically, and maybe even physically, to the Inca underworld Uku Pacha, the world below. You touch the stone. It's cold, colder than the rest, almost pulsing. And there it is, that sensory detail, the smell of mineral-rich water, the roughness of the granite under your fingers, the faint echo of your own breath bouncing off the walls. Now pause here. Take a slow breath. Because the Inca didn't separate the physical and spiritual like we do. For them, the layout of a city mirrored the cosmos. Buildings weren't just functional. They were sacred geometry. Alignments weren't aesthetic. They were metaphysical. And Machu Picchu, it's laid out with eerie precision. Some researchers argue the site forms the shape of a condor from above. Others say it's aligned with the stars, the solstices, the mountain spirits Apus that governed Inca life. And this prison group, it might have been the place you passed through if you needed cleansing, not punishment, purification. An initiation chamber. Imagine this. You're a young Inca noble, chosen to ascend spiritually or politically. Before you can step into higher duty, you must descend into the dark, into the stone, into yourself. You fast. You pray. You maybe lie against the stone for hours, hallucinating the breath of the condor against your cheek, hearing the voice of the mountain beneath you. Then, only then, do you rise again, new, worthy, awakened. But hey, let's not get too dreamy, because remember that other strange structure nearby, the carved staircase that leads to nowhere. It turns out there are several of these dead ends scattered throughout Machu Picchu. They go up, but not to buildings. They descend, but don't connect. Some archaeologists think they're symbolic. Rites of passage, or maybe cautionary metaphors you can climb all you want. But without purpose, you'll end up nowhere. Oof, deep stuff for bedtime, huh? Here's your quirky moment. Bingham believed one of the stones in this area had been used to tie people down during rituals. He even named it the sacrificial stone, but there's no solid evidence for that. It could have been a table, or an altar, or a bench, or maybe he just watched too many pulp adventure serials. Still, the imagery sticks. Stone wings above you, darkness below, and in between you, caught in the middle of transformation. You move on now, climbing out of the subterranean spaces and back toward the light. Your legs ache. The altitude presses against your chest, but you feel different somehow, as if passing through that cave did something not just to your imagination, but to your sense of time. Because here's the emotional beat. Soft but unshakable, the people who built this city didn't think in decades. They thought in dynasties, in cycles, in celestial movements that took lifetimes to complete. And when they carved these stones, they weren't just building structures. They were building a message for time itself. You reach a high terrace and turn around. The sun is dipping now, setting fire to the Vilcabamba Range. The shadows lengthen across the stone, and Machu Picchu transforms again. No longer just ruins, no longer just a puzzle, but a mirror of everything lost, everything hidden, everything remembered, and yet something's still missing, isn't it? You feel it. That quiet heartbeat beneath the stone. That question that still hasn't been answered. Why did they leave? Why here? Why like this? The trail up next is even steeper, but it leads to the most mysterious part of the complex, a structure so precise, so haunting, that it might hold the key to it all. It's called the Intihuatana, and trust me, it doesn't just tell time. It tells everything. You climb now, one slow, uneven step at a time. The air is thinner here, like sipping wind through a straw, and your calves scream just a little louder with every narrow stone stair. But something draws you forward, the promise of precision, maybe of power frozen in rock. Ahead, past a waist-high terrace wall, sits the Intihuatana, the hitching post of the sun. Go ahead, say it out loud. It sounds whimsical. Right, like a playground ride at a cosmic amusement park. But this stone, this one's not for fun. It's a sundial, kind of, maybe. Historians still argue whether it measured time, marked astronomical events, or was simply symbolic, a kind of sacred tether to the heavens. You approach it slowly. It's carved directly from the bedrock of the mountain, like most of Machu Picchu's grandest structures. That's important. It's not a block brought in. It's part of the earth, chiseled, smoothed, then shaped into a complex, stepped form with a short upright pillar in the center, about hip height, depending on how tall you are, rough to the touch, but not crude. And when the sun is at its zenith, right above the pillar, no shadow, no escape. The stone catches light like a beacon, and suddenly you're not in ruins anymore. You're in a world of calculations, of centuries-long tracking, a place where priests read the skies like calendars, and every sliver of shadow meant something divine. Now here's your mainstream historical fact. The Inca were astronomers, not stargazers, not hobbyists, scientists. They tracked solstices, equinoxes, lunar cycles, and planetary movements without telescopes or paper. Their instruments were carved stone, aligned with obsessive precision to the paths of the sun, moon, and stars. Intihuatana stones were rare, sacred, placed only at sites of enormous spiritual power. Most were destroyed by Spanish conquistadors who feared their symbolism. But this one survived because the Spanish never found it. Let that sink in. This mighty empire conquered, crushed, its cities burned, and rulers executed had one mountaintop fortress they never uncovered. And it's not a fortress with battlements or moats. It's a fortress of silence. Imagine standing here centuries ago. It's dawn. The priests in woven tunics whisper chants, their hands raised toward the eastern sky. The mist curls low over the terraces, and the air hums with tension. Then, the first light strikes the pillar. A gasp, a murmur, maybe even a tear. Because light meant life. It meant the sun god, Inti, had not abandoned them. The Intihuatana didn't just measure time. It invited it, tethered it to this world, said, stay with us. Don't let the days slip into chaos. And honestly, who among us hasn't wanted to do that? To grab time by the wrist and say, don't go just yet. I'm not ready. Here's your fringe tidbit. New Age tourists today claim they can feel energy radiating from the stone. Some say touching it causes dizziness, euphoria, even visions. There are stories of people bursting into tears with no idea why, of hearts racing, of sudden clarity. Skeptics roll their eyes, of course. But as your fingers graze the stone's edge, you understand something. Whether it's real or not, people believe, and belief is a kind of power, too. Now, let's zoom out for a moment, because the positioning of the Intihuatana isn't random. Its corners point to the cardinal directions, and its base perfectly aligned with nearby peaks, including Huayna Picchu and Salcantay Mountains, considered apus, or sacred beings. This city doesn't just fit into the mountains, it converses with them. It's like the Inca asked, where does the earth sing the loudest, and then built their masterpiece there? And yet, even this masterpiece was abandoned. This is the mystery that aches beneath every carved step and wall niche. Why did the Inca leave Machu Picchu? There's no record, no sign of struggle or battle, no charred beams, no shattered statues, just absence. Some scholars think it was a strategic retreat. That smallpox carried on winds of conquest ahead of the Spaniards devastated the highlands, leaving Machu Picchu too vulnerable, too disconnected to survive. Others think the site's importance faded after the death of Pachacuti, its visionary founder. Or perhaps it was a sacred city with a limited purpose, fulfilled and then left behind by design. But again, historians still argue, because the city wasn't erased by war. It faded by choice. One morning, perhaps, the last priest stood beside this very stone. He looked out over the terraces, the llamas grazing lazily, the morning mist rising. He turned to the small group who remained farmers, builders, weavers, and gave the signal. Time to go. No rush. No panic. Just a quiet decision. They took what they could carry. They left the temples intact, and they disappeared into the jungle that would swallow the stone paths, the gold-painted walls, the ceremonial platforms that would cover the city in vines and birdsong, hiding it from the world for 4 centuries. And maybe that was the plan all along. Now pause. Take in the stillness. The sun slides lower. The light hits the pillar again. And the stone casts a long shadow toward the edge of the terrace, toward the mountains that still keep their secrets. You feel something flutter in your chest. It's not fear, it's reverence, wonder, that whisper of awe when you realize you're standing in a place so ancient, so deliberate. It makes your daily worries feel like gusts of smoke. And as the breeze brushes your cheek, you remember something else. This stone, the Intihuatana, isn't just a clock or a sculpture. It's a promise. That light returns. That days begin again. And that, even in the face of collapse, someone thought it was worth marking the sun's return. But wait, don't turn away just yet. There's still one more structure you haven't explored. Just beyond the terraces, tucked beside a sheer cliff, lies the royal tomb. Only, it's not a tomb. At least, no one's ever found a body. And what's buried there? Well, that's a tale even deeper than the valley below. You follow the path downhill now. Your footsteps soft on the smooth stone, as if you're afraid to disturb the silence that has blanketed this mountain for hundreds of years. The air changes subtly cooler, more humid. There's a faint scent of moss, maybe even wet clay. Below you, beyond the edge of a carved platform, lies one of Machu Picchu's most enigmatic places, the royal tomb. Except there's no tomb, no bones, no royal remains in silk wrappings. Just a carved cavern, shaped with extraordinary care into something ceremonial, something sacred, yet utterly uninhabited by the dead. For centuries, people have called it the royal tomb, because it looks like something grand and important. But historians still argue whether it ever held a body or if it was something else entirely. So go ahead, step inside. You duck slightly under the overhang of rock. The coolness wraps around your arms like a breath. The walls here aren't just natural, they're worked, smoothed into planes that catch the flickering shadows just so. One enormous vertical stone slab rises in the back wall, gleaming with quartz. Light dances off it in strange ways. Even now, maybe especially now, on one wall, a stone staircase climbs into nothing. Now that's odd. The staircase leads nowhere. It ends at solid stone, a symbolic ascent, a ritual path for the spirit, maybe, or just an architectural flourish. Nobody knows for sure. The Inca never left written records the way we do. No scrolls or codices, no dusty libraries of empire. Their knowledge language, history. Science was kept through oral tradition and knotted string devices called quipas. If there were stories about this place, they've long since unraveled like ropes in the rain. So what are you supposed to make of this? Let's slow down and look at the space again. Here's your mainstream historical fact. This tomb lies directly beneath the Temple of the Sun. The very positioning of the space carved under a solar temple suggests importance. In many Andean belief systems, caves were seen as portals to the world below, paired with the sun temple above. The symbolism is layered. Birth and death, day and night, heaven and the underworld, one stacked on top of the other, like divine bunk beds, which leads us to a quirky little Inca belief the world wasn't divided just into up and down, but into three realms: Hanan Pacha, the upper world, where the gods dwell; Ke Pacha, this world, the living one; and Uku Pacha, the inner or underworld, a spiritual subterranean realm. This carved space, it's Uku Pacha, not a coffin, a doorway, maybe a place to communicate with the other side, maybe a ceremonial entrance point for the elite, maybe a literal womb of the earth, where rebirth was ritually imagined. And here's a detail to savor carved into the stone floor is a series of shallow channels and bowls like altars, or perhaps even for the collection of sacred liquids. Water, chicha blood. The air is still heavy with the possibility. No, that's not your imagination. This place wants to be mysterious. Feel the rough grain of the stone under your fingers. Press your palm flat against it. You can almost imagine the faint warmth left behind by some long-gone priest. Whispered Quechua prayers might still echo in the pores of the walls. And now, allow yourself a small human moment discomfort. Because even though it's quiet, even though the sun is shining up above, you feel a little watched, don't you? Like the space remembers what happened here. Like it's waiting. Maybe the Inca didn't intend this place to be a tomb for bodies, but for memory. A vault where rituals lived, where voices from both worlds could be heard. A performance space for the divine. And yet, one of the oldest legends attached to Machu Picchu says the last high priest left a body behind. Not a corpse, a sleeper. A royal child placed in stasis, hidden beneath layers of stone and ceremony, to be awakened when the sun truly needs saving. Historians scoff. Of course, but legends don't need to be factual. They just need to be believed by enough people for the stones to feel charged. You step back out into the daylight, eyes adjusting as though waking up from a dream. Above you looms the Temple of the Sun, a rounded structure of precise masonry, its windows aligned to solstices and stars. And it's here, standing between what might be the Earth's womb and the sky's throne, that something clicks into place. This city wasn't built for comfort. It wasn't a royal palace alone. It was a map, a sacred grid that mirrored the cosmos, both above and below. And the Inca, they didn't just live here. They performed the universe here. Let me explain. Many scholars believe Machu Picchu was a kind of pilgrimage site, a spiritual destination. The Inca viewed certain geographical features as wakas, sacred places, imbued with supernatural energy. Machu Picchu, high on a ridge between the Amazon and Andes, may have been chosen precisely because it sat at the crossroads of worlds where forest meets mountain, where cloud meets stone. That's the true spine-tingling thing about the royal tomb. It's not the emptiness. It's the overwhelming sense that you weren't supposed to be here yet, that this was a stage waiting for the next act. So, you may be wondering, if this place was so sacred, so astronomically aligned, so rich with purpose, why did they leave? Here's where you lean in, eyes wide, because the truth is both haunting and unresolved. There is no firm record of Machu Picchu in Spanish chronicles. No dramatic tales of battles here. No fires, no desecration. It simply vanishes from history after the Inca retreat during the Spanish conquest. Some believe it was deliberately hidden, left behind like a time capsule, a silent sentinel to hold memory in place until the world was ready again. Others think disease like smallpox or measles devastated the region, forcing survivors to abandon even the holiest sites, a painful, invisible enemy. But then there's the fringe theory, one of the juicier ones, that the Inca never left at all, not completely, that a small group remained hidden in the valleys, watching as centuries passed, that they pass down the knowledge even now, in secret, waiting for a sign to return. Some even believe the lost body in the royal tomb isn't missing. It's simply waiting to be found by someone who knows how to ask. Maybe you, but that story, we're not there yet. As the sun drops behind the jagged edge of Huayna Picchu, the city glows gold for a few last minutes. You sit there at the edge of a terrace, legs dangling like a sleepy kid at summer camp, trying to remember everything you've seen. The precision, the mystery, the silence, and the sense that none of it is an accident. Down in the tomb, the air grows colder. A single bird call echoes sharp, clear, almost like a warning or a farewell. But you're not done yet. There's one final path leading higher still. The Guardian's hut. They call it. It looks small, unimportant. But from there, you'll see everything. You drag your feet a little now. Not because you're tired, though you definitely are, but because there's something about climbing higher at this point that feels final. Like you're reaching the last page of a book you don't want to end. The path narrows, the steps grow steeper, but you keep going. You always do. Above you, the so-called Guardian's hut perches like a lone sentry, watching over time itself. Just a few walls and a thatched roof. Really, nothing special. But don't be fooled. From up there, you'll see something no one, not even Hiram Bingham, when he first stumbled onto this site, could quite describe. You reach the crest, the view unfolds, and boom, there it is. The whole of Machu Picchu below you sprawled like a blueprint of the cosmos, hemmed in by the jagged edges of ancient mountains, veiled by a curtain of drifting cloud that makes the city look half spectral. The terraces ripple outward like waves on a stone sea. The central plaza cuts through the heart like a ceremonial sword, and the Urubamba River snakes far below, glinting in the afternoon sun like it knows some secret it won't ever tell. Let that image settle in your mind for a moment. Let your breath match the wind's hush. And now, imagine this. It's 1537. You're a high-ranking priest, standing in this exact same spot. Your ceremonial robe fluttering in the wind, watching your world crumble in real time. Spanish forces are sweeping through the empire like a plague with armor. Towns burn, temples are looted, entire bloodlines are being wiped out, and not just with swords, but with diseases you don't even have names for. And here you are, at the edge of the known world, staring down at the last sanctuary your people have. The orders come. Hide everything. Erase the trails. Cover the entrances. Take the royal mummies, the sacred quipus, the solar discs of hammered gold, hide them so deeply that not even time can find them. And then walk away. Not in panic, not in chaos, in silence deliberate, sacred, final. That's the version some archaeologists now support, that Machu Picchu wasn't abandoned. It was retired, its purpose fulfilled, its memory preserved by absence. But there's another theory, too, one far more haunting, that the city was never finished, that it was always meant to be part of something larger, a master plan, one node in a network of sacred sites, connected by Sikh's invisible energy lines mapped across the Andes like cosmic circuits. Machu Picchu, in this view, was a capacitor, a storehouse of spiritual power. And just as it was about to be activated, the plug was pulled. Historians still argue whether Machu Picchu was the final royal retreat of Pachacuti, or whether it was part of a ceremonial highway from Cusco to the Amazon basin used to ferry sacred coca leaves, llama caravans, and messages whispered in Quipu code. No consensus exists, but the feeling you get up here, with that wind in your face and the clouds curling beneath your feet, it's not confusion, it's awe. And then you hear it, one of the softest, most subtle sounds in the world, the flit of hummingbird wings. There it is, a single violet-tailed sylph, so fast it's more idea than animal darts past your shoulder and vanishes into the brush. Tiny, insistent, unbothered by history, the Inca believed hummingbirds were messengers from the spirit world. Some said they ferried prayers. Others believed they were the souls of warriors too stubborn to die. It's hard not to see it as a sign. And here's your quirky fact. For the night, archaeologists have discovered that some of the stones used to build Machu Picchu were moved from entirely different mountains, not nearby quarries, distant ones. Inca builders dragged multi-ton boulders up and down unforgiving ridges using no wheels, no steel, no beasts of burden beyond the occasional llama with a bad attitude. Why symbolism? Each stone might have carried not just mass, but meaning. A rock from a sacred peak in the south might connect Machu Picchu to a forgotten temple below. A particular granite vein might represent a god, a season, a cosmological force. These weren't just bricks. They were words. You lean against the stone ledge now, hands pressed to the smooth surface. You've probably done this a dozen times in life, staring out over a view like it might tell you something. But this time, you get it. The Inca didn't build for comfort. They built for continuity. Each path, each wall, each shadow at noon, they were all part of a larger sentence, a dialogue with the stars, a way to speak without paper, without language, without time. And that brings you to the final mystery. Machu Picchu's disappearance. How do you lose an entire city? Sure, jungle reclaims things. Sure, mountains are good at keeping secrets. But this place wasn't tiny. It had a population, a road system, an agricultural network. And yet, for almost 400 years, it simply vanished. No record in Spanish archives. No treasure maps. No folk songs passed down in nearby villages. Just silence. Even when Hiram Bingham discovered it in 1911 thanks to a local Quechua boy named Pablito showing him the overgrown ruins the site was buried beneath centuries of green. Moss on stone. Trees growing through floor plans. Llamas wandering like time travelers. And here's the kicker. Local farmers knew it was there the entire time. But to them, it wasn't a mystery. It was just part of the land, an old city once important. Now sleeping, a sacred place, but not a spectacle. They didn't speak of it in hushed tones. They didn't build shrines. They respected it the way you respect an elder who prefers silence. So the discovery of Machu Picchu, that was a Western fantasy. The people who mattered never forgot. You sit now in the Guardian's hut. The wind whistles through the stone walls. You pull your hoodie tighter, as if trying to keep the moment in. Let this one feeling settle deep in your bones. This place isn't lost. You were. And now you're found. And sure, maybe you didn't uncover a golden idol or decode a sacred quipu. But what you did find, up here on the spine of the Andes, is something just as precious. Perspective. The Inca may be gone, but they didn't vanish. They transformed. They left behind a message so massive, you have to climb 8,000 feet just to begin reading it. A message that says, we were here, we mattered, and we still do. So you take one last look over the valley. The clouds drift lazily now. The hummingbird is gone. The city below gleams faintly in the amber light of evening. And you smile. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that never end. The day is fading now, but the magic doesn't stop. You're descending from the Guardian's hut, each step slower, almost reluctant, as if leaving this sacred place means leaving a part of yourself behind. The shadows grow long, stretching their fingers over the terraces, turning stone into warm gold and deep charcoal. The wind carries a hint of the forest's breath, the faint scent of orchids, damp earth, and the distant call of a fox. You pause at the edge of the central plaza, the heart of the city, and let the silence wash over you again. It's heavy, but not oppressive. It's full of stories waiting to be told. Let's talk about the people who once walked these stones. The Inca weren't just rulers or priests. They were a society, a family network bound by tradition and ritual. Estimates suggest Machu Picchu housed around 750 people at its peak. Farmers tending terraces, artisans crafting delicate ceramics, priests performing ceremonies timed to the movements of the sun and stars. The city buzzed with life, laughter, and perhaps occasional arguments over llama herding or crop yields. Here's your historical nugget. The terraces you see everywhere were not just agricultural plots. They were engineering marvels, built with layers of stone, gravel, and soil. These terraces prevented erosion, preserved heat, and allowed crops to grow in the thin mountain air. Quinoa, maize, potatoes. They thrived here thanks to these stone steps carved into the steep hillside. You can almost feel the rough texture of the walls, built from stones cut so precisely they fit without mortar. Run your fingers along the edges. It's smooth but solid, like the hands of a craftsman who knew his work would last forever. Now, a quirky detail: the Inca had no written language. Instead, they used quipus knotted strings to record everything from census data to agricultural schedules. Imagine communicating with just knots. Some of these quipus were complex enough to encode stories, laws, and historical events, but no one has fully deciphered all of them yet, which means Much of Machu Picchu's secrets remain locked in twisted cords of wool and cotton. Here's where the debate kicks in. Historians still argue whether Machu Picchu was primarily a royal retreat or a religious center. Was it built for Pachacuti, the emperor who expanded the Inca Empire, to escape political intrigue, or was it designed as a pilgrimage site, a spiritual hub connecting Earth and cosmos? The lack of definitive records leaves the answer floating in mystery. As you stand on the plaza, imagine a festival day. The city thrums with energy. Priests in feathered headdresses chant. Llamas adorned with colorful textiles parade past. Musicians play flutes carved from bone. Drums beat a rhythm that echoes off the mountains. The scent of roasting guinea pig mingles with burning sage. Children run between stone houses, their laughter carried on the wind. But even in moments like this, the Inca knew life was fragile. The empire was a vast, delicate balance of alliances, crops, and faith. One poor harvest, one illness, or one act of rebellion could tip the scales. And so, they built Machu Picchu to embody permanence, a fortress of stone and spirit designed to endure the storms of time and conquest. Now, let's dive into an emotionally immersive moment. Picture a young woman named Yana. She lives here, among these terraces, tending her family's crops. Her fingers brush the leaves of potato plants. The earth smells rich beneath her nails. She watches the sun rise over Huayna Picchu, its golden light warming her face. She's hopeful, dreaming of a future where her children play safely under the same sky. But she senses change. Whispers of strangers coming from the coast, of weapons and sickness. She holds her youngest close, feeling the weight of both love and fear. Yana's story is lost to history, but standing here, you connect with her in that moment, a bridge across centuries. The city itself holds echoes of lives like hers, etched into the stones and terraces. As night approaches, the city transforms. The air cools, shadows lengthen, stars begin to pierce the sky, revealing the same constellations the Inca watched so carefully. Machu Picchu was aligned to celestial events. The solstice sun passed through specific windows in the Temple of the Sun, marking the changing seasons. This was not just architecture, it was a cosmic calendar. Now, a sensory-rich detail. Imagine the crackle of a fire in a nearby hearth, the smell of roasting maize, the distant howl of a coyote. You wrap yourself in a woven alpaca blanket, the fibers soft but sturdy, dyed in rich reds and browns. The night is alive with sound and scent. Before you leave this sacred place in your mind, there's one more question hanging in the air. What really happened to Machu Picchu's inhabitants? Did they vanish overnight, as some legends claim, or did they gradually disperse, carrying their culture into hidden valleys? Historians continue to debate this, piecing together clues from archaeological digs and oral histories. Some argue that disease, introduced by Europeans, decimated the population before any recorded battle could take place. Others suggest a strategic withdrawal to preserve the Inca way of life in secrecy. You feel a chill as you realize the city's silence might not be from abandonment alone, but from survival. And as you take your last look at the glowing ruins under the stars, you understand why Machu Picchu captivates us still. It's not just stone and history. It's a living story of resilience, mystery, and hope whispered through the ages. The evening wraps around you like a thick alpaca blanket, soft and warm, despite the chill that creeps down the mountain slopes. You linger by the edge of the terraces, where the stars are finally out in full force, more than you've ever seen in a city, more than your phone's camera can capture. Up here, the Milky Way stretches like spilled sugar across a black velvet sky, and the constellations hold secrets whispered to Inca priests for centuries. You breathe it all in, feeling small and enormous all at once. This is Machu Picchu, at night, the city that vanished, yet somehow still speaks to you through the wind. The stones, the scent of damp earth. It's as if the Andes themselves are breathing a story into your skin, inviting you to listen. Now, a historical fact to anchor you. Machu Picchu's rediscovery in 1911 by Hiram Bingham is just the latest chapter in a long human saga. Though the outside world claims he found it, locals had always known the ruins were there, hidden in plain sight beneath dense jungle growth. This reminds you that sometimes history is not about discovery, but perspective. Let's throw in a quirky tidbit to keep things lively. Recent research suggests that some of the terraces in Machu Picchu were designed not just for farming, but to create microclimates. Certain crops grew better because the terraces could hold heat differently, and some even acted like early refrigerators, using airflow and stone heat retention to preserve food longer. Talk about ancient eco-friendly tech. Historians still argue whether Machu Picchu was abandoned due to imminent Spanish invasion or gradually left as political centers shifted. But whatever the reason, the result was a city frozen in time, preserved in a way few other ancient places have been. You settle into the quiet, letting your senses absorb the fading sounds of the forest, the rustle of nocturnal animals, a distant owl's call, the soft flutter of wings. The stones beneath your fingertips hold centuries of warmth, soaking up the sun by day and releasing it slowly at night. You think of the Inca builders who placed each stone with care and wonder what they'd think of your awe-struck visit. Let's add an emotionally immersive moment. Imagine the city as it once was on a moonlit night. Centuries ago, a priestess climbs the stairs of the Temple of the Moon. Torchlight flickering against the ancient walls. She stops to gaze out at the stars, her breath misting in the cold mountain air. In her hands, a bundle of coca leaves a sacred offering to Inti, the sun god. She prays silently for protection, for the prosperity of her people, and for the city that might soon need to be abandoned. That fragile hope, wrapped in ritual and stone, resonates with you. You feel the loneliness of knowing that great civilizations can slip beneath the tides of history, leaving behind only echoes and stones. Here's a sensory detail to settle your mind. The faint smell of smoke lingers in the air, perhaps from a distant campfire or from long ago, when people gathered here to share stories and dreams beneath the same stars. You hear the soft drip of condensation from leaves and the whisper of a breeze carrying the promise of rain. As you rise to leave, a soft breeze stirs the leaves, as if the mountain itself is sighing. You realize that Machu Picchu's true magic isn't in its stones, or in the mysteries still unsolved. It's in the connection it creates between past and present, between people long gone and those still searching. So you take a deep breath and let the moment settle. You've walked through a vanished city, but it's clear now it was never truly lost. It's alive in the earth, the air, and your memory. And with that thought, you close your eyes. Slowly, the story softens around you like twilight folding into night. The rugged stones become silhouettes. The rustling leaves fade into quiet. You feel yourself drifting, the warmth of the Andes wrapping around you like a lullaby. No need to hurry now. No need to wait just yet. Let the last images linger, the hummingbird's flight, the golden terraces, the star-studded sky. You carry the city's whispers with you as you fall deeper into rest, knowing that some stories never truly end. The story is over. See you tomorrow night. Sweet dreams.